and welcome to another special episode of E&F TV's Bridging the Gap. And today I'm joined by Anhar Noor, Group Revenue Manager at Caravan Motorhome Club. Anhar, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jason. Yes, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. The wind's howling outside. I don't know what it's like where you are, but there's certainly a storm setting in.
Yeah, no, it's not very pleasant outside. Definitely not, which isn't great for the the industry that I'm currently working at. We need some sun. We
Absolutely.
need to do some praying for some sun because that would really help.
We'll learn more about that, but for the time being, so unfortunately for you, I trialed something out before Christmas, and I enjoyed it to such an extent that I thought I'm going to make this a regular feature. And it's five like quick fire questions, could be on absolutely anything. I did warn you that this was going to happen, but I didn't
Yes, you
tell you the
did.
questions, so I hope you're not too nervous. But I've been fairly kind to you this morning. I jotted them down about 20 minutes ago in a blaze of like, oh, I've just got to think of a few things. So we'll start with that, and I think it just enables people to get to know you a little bit on a human level and not the corporate face of Anhar. So we'll start
Sure.
with what did you have for dinner last night?
What did I have for dinner? Oh, I think we had like KFC. Yeah, we had like KFC chicken. So my daughter was a bit unwell. Um, so we said, "Oh, what do you want for dinner?" And that's what she wanted, fried chicken, being the healthy child that she is. So got that for her 'cause I felt that she just seemed a bit down, so I thought that would cheer her up. So yeah, that's what we had. Not the
I'm jealous.
healthiest,
I had
ruining
beans
my
on
diet.
toast. I had beans on toast. I got in from a long run and I just couldn't be bothered to cook anything, so I just literally poured some beans on some toast without even bothering to butter it. So you one up on me anyway.
Yeah.
Next question: what's your favourite sport?
Football, football,
Ah,
Arsenal.
brilliant. You support? Arsenal.
Yes, Arsenal FC, the greatest team at coming second at the moment.
Yeah, and it's looking that way again this year.
So our time will come, I'm sure.
Your nickname, past or present or future?
Oh, don't know. Do I have a nickname? Everyone at university just used to call me by my surname. Like, not that it means anything, but that's just how you know.
Yeah,
Like, play football at university, so everyone just knows you by your surname. So it's just Noor, Noor.
quite cool. Morning or evenings? Are you a morning guy or an evening guy?
Um, Probably an evening guy. In the mornings, it's actually no. Depends on what day of the week it is. So if it's a work day, it's definitely an evening. I'm definitely an evening guy. But
Yeah.
if it's a weekend, I quite like to get up and go to the gym and just invigorate myself for the day ahead.
And you can't be both. You can't be an evening guy and then expect to make the most of the morning the next morning.
Yeah.
I just, as I get older, I think I'm trying to be more of a morning guy, whereas in my
Mm.
younger days, I was certainly an evening guy and foregoing the morning. So tell us
Yeah.
something interesting about you.
Um, when I was younger, I was a ball boy at Wimbledon tennis championships.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, interesting fact. I once got into trouble because I lost a player a point. Because just to give you a bit of background, you're supposed to hold three balls when the opposition player is serving into your corner, and they sent me over six, so I couldn't hold all of them at the same time. And player hit eight, duck out the way. I dropped the ball, and it meant the player lost the point. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I don't think I made TV at that match, but my boss in Wimbledon anyway when I was 15 was very unhappy with me, as you can imagine.
So when was that then? When are we looking at that being?
That must have been, so you're about 50, giving away my age now. It was probably about 20 years ago. I can't remember the player's name,
Okay.
but yeah, I think she was like Finnish or something, and she was shouting in my face afterwards. I was like, I'm sorry.
Oh,
But
how
yeah, that's
rude.
an
But that
interesting
is a claim to fame. That's quite an interesting fact about you. Brilliant. Well, as I say, thank you so much for coming on the show. So I had in mind to ask you to come on because your career development recently has been quite fascinating. So, but before we kind of get into that, tell us a little bit about your well, not just your career so far, but from growing up to where you are now.
Yeah, sure, certainly. So, I grew up in a little part of Surrey called Banstead. So, sort of lived my whole life there. I still live fairly close to there actually at the moment. Got quite a close knit of friends. I've known my friends since about probably about 3 or 4 years old. So, known them all the way through, infant school, junior school. So went to university after that. So I was at Oxford University. There, I, had another group of friends who I still stay in touch with quite regularly. Studied economics there. Not really knowing what to do with the degree, but I thought economics, that sounds smart. My older brother's an economist. I was like, I'm probably just as smart as him, so I'll do that. And then yeah, came out of university and went on to but sort of like a graduate scheme for enterprise rent a car. So did that. It's a graduate management scheme. So I worked there for a couple of years. So I worked there until I was pretty successful in my role in the management role. So I used to look after sort of like a region of the country, and was at crossroads at that point of, do I continue down this operational sort of management path, or do I try my hand at something different? And so within that, there's a big element of revenue management being in the car rental world. So I
Mm.
thought, I did economics, revenue management. That sounds numbersy, and using analysis and some of the skills that I would have learned in my degree. So I decided to make the jump. So went into revenue management for enterprise. Looking after some pretty big markets. In fact, one of the biggest markets in my time there. So I think I did revenue management there for about 10 years now. I think it's coming up to. That's all the big major markets. So the London, Heathrow, Gatwick, Dublin, all of these big airport locations. Some of the massive sort of local locations as well across various countries. So I looked after the UK for 4 or 5 years. Then I moved into France, looked after the south and the west of France, sort of like Bordeaux areas, Toulouse areas, Nice areas, for a few years there. Had the opportunity to move to the German markets. Again, they wanted to, I guess, leverage some of my expertise that I had, especially in the airports. Um, so I went and sort of looked after some of the big German markets there, and then had an opportunity after about 10 years to make a bit of a jump to a different company in revenue management. So the Caravan Motorhome Club, which is where I currently work. Um, so applying the same revenue management principles to obviously to this industry, which is slightly different, but it gives a new challenge to myself and an ability sort of to grow my skill set, and sort of just be a bit more well-rounded from a revenue management perspective. I know in car rental world inside out, the campsite world, I'm getting there, and hopefully I'll have the same level of expertise. But I just feel like having those different areas of revenue management, in the revenue management world, can give you a really well-rounded view of how to do, certain strategies or put into place certain tactics that will yield the best results.
So rewinding, I mean, nobody ever wants to get into it. No one knows what revenue management is. It kind of just happens to people, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's a certain stage of your career. So you knew, obviously, you said, I think your brother was an economist. You knew you wanted to do something with numbers. And so you were looking on graduation at doing something with numbers, with maths in that kind of field, but
yeah,
potentially financial, maybe, or at that
yeah.
point.
So when I can tell you a bit more about it. So I didn't really, when I was in operations, I didn't really know what revenue management was. You were there and you kind of think of it as this old school, oh, these are the guys that just set the prices. That was kind of how it was looked at. Like, oh, they set the prices. They sit behind a computer screen and press one button a day, and that's it. That's their job. Like, they don't really know the ins and outs of it, right? So I remember I saw this position come up, and because I was at that crossroads in my career, I thought, you know what, this sounds really up my street. It's got all the things that I like
What,
doing.
pressing one button a day?
Pressing one button a day, yeah. So no one told me that it's actually more than one button, but um, it was just having the influence, having that responsibility and that influence over a much larger part of the business, looking at everything from a more of a data perspective, trying to find areas where you can make revenue gains. One of the things I really liked about it when I was doing my role was when you're sort of in the analysis and you're there and you're challenged. Okay, we need to make more revenue next year, and you've already had you've had a fantastic year already, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, how am I going to make record numbers on top of record numbers? But you challenge yourself. Okay, let me look into the data. Where is something that I can figure out by slicing this data down and identifying an area and being like, you know what, that's something that I've figured out or I've identified that's going to give us a competitive edge versus this really crowded market, especially in the car rental world. And then, it's sort of like a little science experiment. Okay, well, I know this nugget of information that I think, and you theorize it and you write it all down. You think this is what's happened in the past. This is what's happened last year, the year before that. If I extrapolate that out, this is what's likely to happen. Let me test it out. Okay, I'm going to test it out on this thing. Obviously you have to have the conversations, and I'd always be transparent with the people that you work with. Say, look, I think this is what's going to happen. I want to test this out. What do you think? Yeah, sounds great. Let me know what you get to. And then you put it out, and sometimes it doesn't work, and you put your hands up. Say, you know what, didn't work as I planned. That's okay. We tested it, and we'll try a different strategy next time. But sometimes you put it in there like, you know what, this is this has made us quite a lot of money. You shifted your mix into here. This is a much stronger yielding product. I think we should do more of this, or expand this out, or cover more locations and more date ranges, etc., etc. Um, so yeah, that's what I really, really, really liked about it. But I didn't know any of that prior to moving over to revenue management, because it was like looking, me and my colleagues in my last company would always sort of talk about it, saying, imagine you had that knowledge of revenue management whilst you're working in operations. Like you just, your performance would be through the roof because you'd understand the full picture of everything instead of more of the what's going on this week, next month. No one's ever thinking about 6 months down the line or next year. Whereas in revenue management, the horizon that you look at is generally a lot further out, far more all-encompassing as well.
You still talk with a lot of passion about the car rental industry. And maybe it's a misconception that I've always had, but I always thought it was one of those kind of industries where, car rental is, maybe this is just me when I'm booking hire cars when I go on holiday, but very much a commodity and very much price led because one company is another company is another company. What other kind of factors come into it other than price?
Um, So a lot of it will be based off of historical demand, as you'd expect. So be okay, well, what's the demand here? What's likely to happen? You try to identify, is that market going to be is that market going to be squeezed in the future? So let's say you have a prime period of time. Let's use Christmas as an example. Okay, so last year this is what happened in the market, and the prices went to here. Now, with all the knowledge I have and all the insight I can get from other departments that you work within, what do you think is going to happen? What's happening to the current car buying cycle this year in this industry? Okay, there's a bit of a squeeze on car availability. Okay, well, what's going to happen to that? And then you sort of cascade all that down. If that's going to happen here, that's going to happen here, that's going to happen here. I think there's going to be a shortage of cars at this point. Okay, that means I don't want to undersell myself with my advanced strategy. And so you put that in place, you monitor it, but a lot of it will be just trying to calculate what the future's going to happen, what your availability is going to be, what your competitors' availability is going to be, and positioning yourself correctly. You don't want to sell out 4 weeks to go when your prime booking window is probably 2 weeks out. At the same time, you don't want to not sell out with 1 week to go and you've got 50% of your inventory still to rent because you positioned yourself so high. So it's just trying to find that balance and using all the knowledge and data and the expertise that you have at your hands, not just from your own department, but from other departments that you'll work sort of cross-functionally with to position yourself correctly. So that's probably one of the main things is getting that advanced strategy correct and then just trying to figure out the additional impacts on that industry. So you could look at other lines of business. I don't know, say something like replacement business, so insurance business, weather. If the weather's going to be really, really bad, what's that going to happen? That's probably going to have a knock-on impact onto insurance business. Insurance business goes up, it goes up for you. But guess what? Your competitors probably have the insurance contracts themselves. What's going to happen to them? Their insurance business is going to go up as well. So that means their leisure, the pool of cars available to leisure is going to go down. Therefore, the price is going to be higher for that. So just those little factors there. You don't want to just put, I'm going to put the same price in as last year, or the same price plus 10%. I want to make sure if that same price plus 50 needs to be last year plus 50%, because there's a huge squeeze on availability for leisure cars, then that's what you need to put in place as opposed to underselling yourself. So there's a lot of moving parts and additional sort of metrics that you're trying to always consider And you just need to ensure you stay on top of that as well, just with your booking curves and at what pace you're booking in at.
Increasing moving parts versus hotels and hospitality in general, really, because it's
Mm.
not a fixed inventory, is it? A hotel has got 100 rooms and it's got 100 rooms unless, something really weird happens. But with you guys, obviously, not you guys, but in car rental, that side of things is not so fixed, is it?
Yes, you'd always have a moving target as such, and that it added to it added to the fun, yeah, added to the stress. But I found it quite fun because it was just such a moving target all the time.
Yeah.
You've got a fleet of cars. Let's say your fleet of cars is 1,000, for a location. Um, Suddenly the car that you're expecting to use for leisure, oh, there's been a really bad storm. We've had to give them to a replacement customer or an insurance customer. Okay, that's not available. Well, what do you do then? You have to always try to build in this sort of buffer. I think we were forecasting day by day, every day at the point that we got to, because we got to such a like sort of finessed version of forecasting that we were doing it daily. Every day we're forecasting, every day we're forecasting for that day, the next 2 to 3 weeks, to stay on top of all the trends from the other channels to make sure we're hitting the numbers and the occupancy numbers and the revenue numbers that we were looking for. But yeah, it was tricky for us because sometimes you're building in volumes of leisure business, and you're booking to a number. Let's say again that number's 1,000, and suddenly there's a delay in the new cars that are supposed to be delivered to you. That 1,000 has gone to 800. And you're like, oh my God, like that's taken my availability right down. My booking curve is booking now way too fast. My yields to make up for the shortfall in revenue, I need to now figure out what the yield differential that I need to position itself at because we need to make X amount of money. So there's just a lot of that you would kind of have to do, and you'd have to constantly update and be able to communicate with the senior management in the country that you are working with.
Sounds like the exact opposite of your first thoughts about revenue management and just pressing one button a day.
Yes, it's certainly a lot more complex. And one of the great things was in my career in obviously enterprise was you can see the evolution of revenue management, but also the understanding from operations as well on revenue management. So the value that we brought in to it. So previously, so when I started in revenue management, it would have been you just change the price. By the end of it, you weren't just pricing guy, you were the business partner, and you had a huge amount of value and a huge amount of influence and weight in terms of the decisions for that group or that region of the country because they knew that you could add so much value. Imagine someone turned around to you for your business and said, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in the future. Do you want to know what's going to happen in the future? Of course you do. Do you want to make more money?
Of course.
Of course you do. That's what I'd always say. It's like, look,
Mm.
this is my job is to give you my opinion based off of data. And sometimes we might not necessarily always agree on it, but I feel like you need to know what my perspective is, and I need to know what your perspective is, and we can get to a happy or an unhappy medium, but somewhere around that sort of middle ground. But it would be this is what I think is likely to happen based off historical behavior. The senior managers I speak to would be like, okay, well, I know that this and this is happening locally, so that might not be quite the case this year. But it was nice to have that relationship with the senior leaders of the business because they would look at you and it made you feel really valued and that you knew that the work that you're doing had a really big impact onto the bottom line of the business.
Then point came in your career where you decided to do something drastic and leave the car rental industry and
Yeah.
take on a position in revenue management within hospitality, but not just hospitality, in Caravan and Motorhome Club. So talk us through that decision.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the car rental revenue management side of things for about 10 years at this point. I really, really probably tell, I really enjoyed my time there. I loved the company. I loved my colleagues and everyone that I worked with. And well, I was very comfortable. I could easily stay there for another, 10 years or so and just been in that world. But at one point I thought, you know what, you need to sometimes you need to take a risk. Sometimes you need to challenge yourself and see, can I do this? Can I be truly successful in doing this in a completely different industry? and use my expertise and my knowledge and everything that I've learned over the years in a different industry. And that's where that kind of came from. And I remember, I can't remember, there must have been a TED talk of some sort, but it was just like you need to sort of always be learning and always be challenging yourself. And I'm not going to profess that I knew everything about the car rental world, but I knew a lot about it. You know what's likely to happen. You know the pitfalls that you can, the mistakes that potentially could happen. But you also knew how to rectify them straight away if it did happen. Okay, this is slowed down. What do I need to do? What do I need to measure? So on and so forth. So I just wanted just to sort of challenge myself more and sort of professionally grow and develop a bit more in a different industry, and I just, and have that impact that I've had in car rental, on the new company that I would be working for.
What's about the differences then between RM in car rental versus RM in the caravan world?
Yeah, so I think the inventory, there's positive and negatives to it. So the inventory would constantly be moving in the car rental world, like I mentioned to you earlier. So you've got this moving target, you're always trying to predict where that's going to land, which made it hard. So in the campsite world, obviously that doesn't really flex around as much, but you also don't have the ability to lower the fleet or lower the campsites. You can't just say, oh, you know what, just open half the campsite for this year. So there's positives and negatives to that. Just understanding the world was a big part. I've gone into the Caravan Motorhome Club, and I don't really know a huge amount about motorhoming
Yeah.
or camping or anything like that. So just getting to grips with all of the little niches and what the customers look at and the members want, or how they perceive price, what their booking journey is. Our booking journey in the car rental is, oh, I'll go to a comparison website and book a car, which doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
happen in the campsite world. So just understanding that it's not as in the car rental world, everyone, I'd say everyone does revenue management. So you're in this really, really competitive, fluid marketplace, dynamic marketplace where price positions are changing 2, 3 times a day, maybe. That's not the same in the campsite world.
Yeah.
Pricing is a lot more static. I'd actually say we're probably leading the way with revenue management in the campsite world. I think other people might be moving potentially in the future to that model, um, but just sort of building that from more of like a not the ground up as such, but certainly from an earlier part of the revenue management journey, is one of the things that really attracted me to move over as well.
Tell us a little bit, Anhar, about the journey that Caravan and Motorhome Club's been on with revenue management.
Yeah, so I think, having that in place really gives us the flexibility to provide the best value that we can to our members, whilst also generating the revenue that we need to add more campsites in, add better facilities and upgrade some of the campsites. We're a member organisation, so we need to generate the revenue to pay for all the works and everything like that. And I think, we've looked at what it does and what it brings, and we can still provide huge amounts of value, while still generating a bit more revenue to help pay for facilities upgrades and buying these new campsites. So there's more of a network for our customers to choose from.
Fantastic. So you've been there. How long have you been at Caravan and Motorhome Club now?
So I've been there for 8 months now, so still fairly newish. I know a lot more about motorhomes and things like that now. So yeah, it's a
Based.
steep learning curve, but more about the industry, I think, than the actual revenue management side of it. It's just getting to grips with all the little niches of the industry and the different types of members and what they look for and what they see value in.
How do the skills differ between the two industries? The skills needed for, say, I don't know, a revenue analyst coming on board in car rental versus someone maybe that you could be taking on to assist with revenue management
Uh,
in your new world.
yeah, so to be honest, I don't actually think the skill set that you require, the skills are completely transferable. There's nothing different or new, or that's you have to have an understanding of this to be able to revenue manage in this world versus that world. It's the same sort of logic driven, theoretical approach that you need to have. You need to, model out scenarios. This is what I think is going to happen. This is why I think it's going to happen. This is the data behind the scenes that we're utilizing to help guide our decision making. So I would say the skills are completely the same that you need. It's just your knowledge of the industry is what is the bit that's a bit more of a hurdle because you just have to learn it. You can't,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. If I wasn't in this industry, I probably wouldn't have sat here and learned all about caravans and motorhomes and camping. But it's the same with car rental. I learned a lot about cars because I was in the industry, and
Yeah.
that definitely helped. And obviously, same with here. You know more about the industry, you more understand your consumer better. You understand what they look for, what they value, and therefore you can make sure that you're positioned to give them the best value that you can.
So the skills are largely the same. It's just a case of you immersing yourself in the industry, learning about what makes your
Yeah,
customers tick, what makes them buy, potential
yeah.
for upsells and upgrades.
Yeah, and just try to just translate certain things as well, like I don't know, the booking curves that you get in campsite. As you mentioned earlier, car rentals are a commodity. When you go on holidays, it's probably the last thing that you book. So most people probably book them within a week, 10 days out
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Campsites, again, some of them book really far out, but they're probably booking, within a month, 2 months out. So some of those booking curves are slightly different. But the theory and the logic is still the same. It's just under making sure you can translate the differences into this industry.
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think one brilliant thing about Caravan and Motorhome Club is that deal with a lot of clients, and most of them, admittedly, are hotels, but they're very often looking for like a cookie cutter replacement to what they had previously. So if it's a multi-branded hospitality management company and their CRM leaves, they're looking for a cluster revenue manager that's operated in that environment with a similar amount of hotels. And I think what they've done with you, Caravan and Motorhome Club, is they've seen the potential cross industry and they've had the foresight to look elsewhere. I mean, you may say that, well, are you going to find that many RMs working in caravan and motorhome in industries? So they had to, but still a little bit of foresight, I think, and a little bit of credit is due for them for looking elsewhere and having chats with people in different industries and seeing what skills they can bring in order to continue their revenue management journey. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, when you look at it, you might look at, okay, have you used, RevPar? Yeah, for hotels, fine. We use RevPAP, which is pitches in a room. But in car rentals, it's just, okay, well, revenue per available car. The acronyms might be slightly different, but the how you're tracking it and the methodology you're using is pretty much identical for most of it. There's some slight differences with, as I said, more about the inventory and things along those lines, but the general theory and logic behind it all is pretty much the same. This space is busy. Can I move more demand in there, or can I yield up more? This space isn't busy. Can I generate more volume by dropping to a more competitive price point, et cetera, et cetera? That's just the crux of everything really, and I don't think it vastly differs between the two industries.
So what's next for Caravan and Motorhome Club then? What opportunities are on the horizon? Any kind of new acquisitions or any new way of doing things that you kind of spearheading for the company?
So I think it's just getting some more um, just get some more revenue management levers into place. I think it's the main opportunity, and these will allow us to position different products in different places at different price points, which will hopefully match to the demand in that location or in that sort of date span. So just developing the infrastructure, um, probably a bit more, um, is probably the main task or the main opportunity I'd say for this year.
Brilliant. And what's next for you in the future then? I mean, you've obviously got your feet under the table now. You're kind of developing and introducing new levers, as you say, new ways of looking at revenue management. What's next for you?
I haven't really thought about that in all honesty, Jason. This is probably no. Obviously, I spent my last company. I was there for 10 years before I even thought about looking elsewhere.
What
So I've probably
what's
got
next
like
when you're 60?
yeah, 10 more years here. Then I might think, hey, you know what, make a jump to something else. I'm just really excited to do what I can to do all the new things with the Caravan and Motorhome Club, and I think there's so much that we can still add in, so much value we can add to our customers, so much so many different approaches that we can add just to revenue management within as well within that industry because it's not really a huge revenue management industry at the moment, but I can see that evolving in the upcoming years. So to be part of that is that's just kind of what I'm focusing on at the moment. But yeah, in the future, I'll see. Might look at another industry that like, oh, don't really know as much about that, but they do revenue management. Let's give that a go. I think
I
revenue
think
management
you're
take over the world. So I think everything will be revenue management at some point. I think that's just the way where things are going. So I think it's a really exciting industry to be part of.
I think you're a trailblazer, and maybe with more people like you coming on the show, talking, obviously aimed at students, but talking about, your how you've kind of gone about revenue management, tried different things, and how you got into it. Maybe fewer people will fall into it, and more people actually start thinking about that at uni as a potential career.
Yeah. And you know what? I think one of the hurdles that we're getting is that it's just not it's not an industry that people really know about. Um like, at university or maybe the early stages of their career. And when people always ask me what do you do, and I sort of explain to them, I think the way I say to give the explanation that I always give is like imagine you're playing chess with 20 different people and you don't know what move they're going to make and you need to position yourself the best way. Like that's how I used to that's how I used to explain it. I'm making this move. I'm monitoring the market. I'm monitoring what our competitors are moving, and then making sure that I move the appropriate adjustment off the back of that. And they're like, "Oh, that sounds really, really interesting." I was like, "Yeah, that is revenue management." It's a shame that not more people understand it as well. And I think once they learn about it and get into sort of like the details of what we do, that's when they say, "Oh, you know what? It's actually really interesting and it's really, really impactful." And it's something that I think we should definitely shout about more.
I think that analogy is fantastic because otherwise you're talking to someone that you don't know at a party and they ask what you do. The tendency is to dumb it down too much and go
Yeah,
along the lines of, yeah, I do the pricing for this, and then you just think I've done myself an absolute disservice here because it just
yeah.
looks like I press one button a week, as you said initially.
That's my
So I think
next
that
job.
way
That's
of
what I'm looking
explaining
for.
it.
If anyone's got a
Yeah,
revenue
there
management
you
job, just
go.
one button a week. I'm up for that.
More money, less responsibility. This is what we're all trying to do. This is the
Yeah,
zenith. Listen, Anna, I've really enjoyed chatting to you. Genuinely, my eyes light up when I talk to people that have done revenue management like cross industry because they've picked up so many skills along the way, and that kind of translation from one to the other has always fascinated me, and how the skills that you learn in one industry are absolutely transferable into another. So thank you for joining me. I'll let you go. And
thanks for having me.
yeah, anyone that wants to ask you any questions, I presume that they can kind of hit you up on LinkedIn, send you a
Yeah, yeah,
question if you're
certainly.
willing to
Yeah.
answer any questions.
Any questions, any advice, anything like that, I'm more than happy to help.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jason. Take care.
That's all we've got time for this week. Like and share the show because it helps us attract really cool guests like Anhar.
Here
See
we
you next
go.
week.